Marcus Hayes sat in his cramped studio apartment, staring at the divorce papers his wife Elena had thrown at him 3 weeks after his mother's funeral, her words still echoing. "I can't be poor forever, Marcus. I'm marrying someone who can actually provide." That someone was Derek Chen, his best friend since college, the man who'd stood beside him at his mother's grave, while Marcus wept, unaware that the woman they'd just buried had left behind a $7.3 billion fortune he knew nothing about. Elena had no idea that the two poor husbands she'd abandoned was now worth more than Derek's entire family combined. But when the estate lawyer finally tracked Marcus down with documents proving his inheritance, what he chose to do with his multi-billionaire status would leave his ex-wife speechless and begging. But would Marcus choose revenge or something far more devastating? And what secret had his mother kept hidden about her wealth that made Marcus question everything he thought he knew about his humble upbringing? Marcus's fingers trembled as he set down the crystal tumbler, watching amber liquid catch the afternoon light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows he still couldn't believe belonged to him. 4 months had passed since Lawrence Whitmore, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates, had walked into his studio apartment with a leather portfolio that changed everything. The attorney's words still played in his mind like a scratched record. "Mr. Hayes, your mother, Catherine Hayes, was the primary shareholder of Hayes Consolidated Industries. You are the sole heir to approximately $7.3 billion. Marcus had laughed, actually laughed, thinking it was some cruel joke. His mother had been a quiet woman who'd raised him alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, working double shifts as a bookkeeper for small businesses throughout his childhood. She'd worn the same winter coat for 15 years, clipped coupons religiously, and made him return library books a day early to avoid potential late fees. The idea that she'd been sitting on billions while they had eaten pasta 4 nights a week seemed absurd, but Whitmore had been patient, spreading documents across Marcus's scratched coffee table. Corporate filings, stock certificates, property deeds, photographs of his mother at board meetings wearing designer suits Marcus had never seen. Catherine Hayes hadn't just been wealthy. She'd built an empire starting in her 20s, buying struggling companies and turning them into industry leaders. She'd hidden it all from Marcus, living modestly, teaching him the value of hard work and humility. "Why?" Marcus had asked, his voice breaking. "Why would she hide this from me?" Whitmore had handed him a letter, his mother's elegant handwriting covering cream-colored stationery. "My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth face to face. I wanted you to build character, to understand struggle, to become a man who wouldn't be corrupted by wealth. Every scholarship you earned, every job you worked, every challenge you overcame, you did it on your own merit. The money was always going to be yours, but I needed you to be ready for it. I've watched you become exactly the kind of man who deserves this responsibility. Make me proud. With eternal love, Mom." Marcus had cried then, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. His mother had died from a sudden heart attack 3 weeks earlier, and he'd buried her in a simple ceremony he'd paid for with his credit card, going into debt he couldn't afford because she'd had no life insurance. Or so he'd thought. In reality, she'd been worth billions, and she'd let him struggle through the funeral arrangements, probably intending to reveal everything after. Except she'd died so suddenly there'd been no time. Now Marcus stood in the penthouse his mother had owned, one of 17 properties worldwide he'd inherited, trying to reconcile the woman who'd taught him to save aluminum foil with the corporate titan who'd negotiated billion-dollar acquisitions. The apartment was pristine, but impersonal, like a 5-star hotel. His mother had never lived here, just owned it as an investment. According to Whitmore, she'd maintained her modest Queens apartment until her death, keeping her 2 lives completely separate. His phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Marcus declined the call, the same way he had for the past 4 months. His former best friend had been relentless, leaving voicemails that evolved from confused to annoyed to worried. Elena had tried too, though less frequently. Her messages brief and transactional, questions about mail forwarding, requests to pick up belongings she left behind. They had no idea. Nobody did. Whitmore had advised complete discretion until all the legal paperwork cleared, and Marcus had taken that advice to heart, He'd kept his job at the architectural firm, kept living in his studio apartment for the first 2 months while the inheritance processed, kept existing in the world that had always known him as Marcus Hayes, the guy who couldn't afford to go out for drinks after work. The memory of Elena's face when she'd handed him divorce papers burned like acid. They'd been married for 4 years, together for 7, and he'd loved her with the kind of desperate intensity that blinded him to warning signs. She'd started changing about a year ago. Around the time Derek had made partner at his law firm, suddenly Marcus's job as a junior architect wasn't impressive enough. His modest salary, decent but not extravagant, became a source of constant criticism. "Derek's taking Rachel to Turks and Caicos for their anniversary," she'd said one night, her voice sharp with resentment. "We can't even afford a weekend in the Poconos." Marcus had been saving for months to surprise her with a trip to Napa Valley, cutting back on lunches, walking to work instead of taking the subway. He'd wanted to wait until their anniversary, make it special, but that conversation had killed his enthusiasm. He'd canceled the trip and spent the money on their rent when he'd gotten laid off for 3 months the previous year. He hadn't known Elena had been confiding in Derek during that period, meeting him for lunch, texting him late at night. He hadn't suspected anything when Derek started coming around more often, offering to help with odd jobs, lending them money Marcus had carefully tracked to repay. He'd trusted them both completely. His mother's death had been sudden. One day she'd been fine, calling Marcus to remind him to get his car inspected. The next day she'd collapsed at the grocery store, gone before the paramedics arrived. Marcus had been devastated, barely functional. Derek had been there immediately, helping with arrangements, sitting with Marcus in silence when words failed. Elena had been supportive too, or so it seemed. But 2 days after the funeral, Marcus had come home to find Elena packing. "I can't do this anymore," she'd said, not meeting his eyes. "I've been unhappy for a long time, Marcus. You're a good person, but you're never going to be successful. I need more than this." She gestured at their apartment, at their life, at him like he was a disappointing purchase she was returning. "I just buried my mother," Marcus had said, his voice hollow. "I know, and I'm sorry about Catherine. I really am. But I've met someone who can give me the life I want." She'd paused, and Marcus had known before she said it. "Derek and I have been seeing each other. We didn't mean for it to happen, but..." The rest had been white noise. His wife and his best friend, the 2 people he'd trusted most after his mother. Derek had looked guilty when Marcus confronted him, but not guilty enough to back away. "I love her, man," he'd said. "I didn't plan this, but I can give her everything you can't. She deserves to be happy." They'd married quickly, some courthouse ceremony Marcus heard about through mutual friends who'd awkwardly unfriended him on social media. Elena had posted wedding photos, her in an expensive dress, Derek in a designer suit, both of them beaming at some trendy restaurant Marcus couldn't have afforded on a year's salary. That had been 3.5 months ago. 3.5 months of Marcus drowning in grief and betrayal, going through the motions at work, existing rather than living. And then Whitmore had appeared with his leather portfolio, and everything had changed. Marcus picked up his phone and opened Instagram, something he rarely did anymore. Elena's profile was public, her life on display, photos of her and Derek at charity galas, vacation snapshots from Saint-Tropez, pictures of their new townhouse in Brooklyn Heights. She tagged Derek's law firm constantly, name-dropping his partners, positioning herself as the sophisticated wife of a successful attorney. Derek had posted a photo 3 days ago, him and Elena at some legal conference, her hand on his chest, both of them looking insufferably smug. The caption read, "Blessed to have this amazing woman by my side. Here's to building our future together." Marcus closed the app, his jaw tight. They thought they'd won. Elena had traded up, Derek had gotten the girl, and Marcus had been left with nothing but grief and humiliation. Except that wasn't true anymore, was it? He had $7.3 billion and all the power that came with it. He could destroy them both financially and socially without breaking a sweat. One call to Derek's managing partner about some carefully leaked information, one social media post revealing his net worth, one purchase of Derek's firm followed by Derek's immediate termination. But his mother's letter sat on his desk, and he kept reading it, trying to understand what she would have wanted. She'd hidden her wealth to teach him character, to ensure money didn't corrupt him. Would she want him to use it for revenge? Or would she expect something better from the son she'd raised? Whitmore had mentioned that Hayes Consolidated Industries owned 17% of Derek's law firm through a complicated web of subsidiary investments. Marcus hadn't pursued the connection yet, but it was there, waiting. He also knew that Elena's new lifestyle was entirely dependent on Derek's income and his family money, which was substantial but nothing compared to what Marcus now controlled. The question wasn't what he could do. The question was what he should do and what kind of man he wanted to be with this unexpected power. 6 months after Whitmore's revelation, Marcus walked into the lobby of Morrison, Chen and Associates, where Derek was a partner. The security guard didn't recognize him. Why would he? Marcus had never visited Derek's firm before, always meeting at bars or restaurants. Now he wore a Tom Ford suit tailored specifically to his measurements, carried a leather briefcase that cost more than his old car, and moved with the quiet confidence that came from knowing he could buy the entire building if he wanted. "I have an appointment with Richard Morrison," Marcus told the receptionist, smiling politely. She checked her computer, nodded, and directed him to the top floor. Marcus had spent the last 2 months becoming familiar with Hayes Consolidated Industries' portfolio, attending board meetings via video conference, learning the business his mother had built. He discovered she'd been a genius at identifying undervalued companies and transforming them. She'd also been ruthlessly strategic about maintaining control while staying out of the public eye. Morrison, Chen and Associates was a mid-sized law firm specializing in corporate litigation. Successful but not elite, profitable but with room for growth. Hayes Consolidated owned 17% through a holding company, enough to influence decisions, but not enough to draw attention. Marcus had done his research. The firm needed capital to expand. Several partners were approaching retirement, and there was internal tension about the firm's direction. Richard Morrison was the founding partner, 72 years old and looking to secure the firm's legacy before he stepped down. Marcus had reached out through intermediaries, expressing interest in investment opportunities. Morrison had jumped at the chance, never connecting Marcus Hayes, the investor, with Marcus Hayes, who Derek occasionally mentioned as his ex-best friend. Morrison's office was oak-paneled and traditional, filled with legal texts and framed diplomas. The man himself was tall and distinguished, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had spent decades evaluating witnesses and opponents. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming," Morrison said, shaking hands firmly. "I've been impressed by your portfolio. Hayes Consolidated has an excellent reputation." They settled into leather chairs, and Morrison launched into a presentation about the firm's growth potential, current client base, and expansion plans. Marcus listened carefully, asking intelligent questions, demonstrating knowledge that seemed to surprise Morrison. "I'll be direct," Morrison finally said. "We're looking for a strategic investor who can provide capital and potentially open doors to new clients. In exchange, we're offering equity and board representation. But I need to know your intentions. Are you looking for passive investment or active involvement?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I believe in investing in people as much as businesses. I'd want to understand your team, your culture, your vision. I'd also want assurance that current leadership shares my values regarding integrity and loyalty." Something flickered in Morrison's eyes. "Interesting you mentioned loyalty. It's been a concern of mine lately." Marcus said nothing, waiting. "We have a partner," Morrison continued carefully, "who's very talented but increasingly difficult. Derek Chen. Brilliant litigator, brings in significant business, but he's become arrogant, treating staff poorly, cutting corners on ethics, using firm resources for personal matters." He paused. "I'm considering whether he's the right fit for our future." Marcus kept his expression neutral. He hadn't anticipated this, but apparently Derek's success had gone to his head in ways beyond stealing Marcus's wife. "I'd want to review all partners' performance metrics before making any investment decision," Marcus said, "but I value culture over individual talent. One toxic person can poison an entire organization." Morrison nodded slowly. "I think we're going to work well together, Mr. Hayes. Why don't you attend our partners meeting next week? Get a feel for the dynamics before you commit." They shook hands again, and Marcus left, his mind racing. He hadn't planned on Derek's own behavior creating problems, but it opened interesting possibilities. Sometimes revenge wasn't necessary when people destroyed themselves. That evening, Marcus attended a charity gala for pediatric cancer research, the kind of event Elena had always begged to attend, but they could never afford tickets to. Now he had a table, wore a tuxedo that cost more than their old monthly rent, and moved through rooms of Manhattan's elite like he belonged, because now he did. Marcus Hayes? A woman's voice stopped him near the bar. He turned to find Sarah Winters, Derek's boss's wife, looking at him with recognition. I thought that was you. I haven't seen you since... Oh, she faltered, remembering. Since before the divorce, since before the betrayal everyone in their social circle knew about. Hello, Sarah, Marcus said warmly. How are you? I'm well. You look amazing. I heard you came into some family money? So the rumors had started. Inevitable, given his sudden visibility in these circles. My mother left me some assets, he said carefully. I'm still figuring out what to do with them. Sarah glanced around, then leaned closer. Can I be honest? What Derek did was unforgivable. A lot of us stopped talking to him and Elena after we heard what happened. Taking advantage of your grief like that? She shook her head. Anyway, I'm glad you're doing well. You deserve it. They chatted for a few more minutes, and Marcus learned that Derek and Elena weren't as socially successful as their Instagram suggested. Many people found them nouveau riche and tactless, Elena's constant bragging off-putting, Derek's arrogance alienating colleagues. Later, Marcus saw them across the ballroom. Elena wore a silver gown that was trying too hard, dripping with jewelry that screamed, "Look how wealthy I am." Derek stood beside her in a tuxedo that didn't fit quite right, both of them working the room with the desperation of people trying to prove they belonged. Elena saw Marcus first. Her face went through a remarkable transformation, confusion, recognition, shock, and something that looked like panic. She grabbed Derek's arm, whispering urgently. Derek turned and Marcus watched color drain from his former friend's face. Marcus raised his champagne glass in a small salute and turned away, disappearing into the crowd. Let them wonder. Let them panic. Let them spend the night speculating about how Marcus Hayes could possibly be at an event where tickets cost $50,000 per table. His phone buzzed. Elena. He declined the call. 2 minutes later, Derek tried, declined. Then Elena again, followed by a text. Marcus, we need to talk. Please call me. He blocked both numbers and went back to networking with people who actually mattered. People who controlled the kind of power and influence that could reshape industries. His mother had built an empire while living modestly, teaching him that real wealth was quiet, strategic, and purposeful. She would have been proud of how he was handling this, not with explosive revenge, but with patient, calculated moves that would reshape the entire board. The partners' meeting at Morrison, Chen and Associates was held in a conference room that tried to project success, but mostly achieved pretension. Marcus sat beside Richard Morrison, introduced as a potential major investor who was evaluating the firm. The 14 partners sat around a massive mahogany table, most looking curious, a few looking nervous, and Derek looking like he might vomit. Derek had clearly done his homework in the week since the gala. His expression kept flickering between disbelief and fear, his eyes darting to Marcus constantly. Elena must have lost her mind when she learned the truth. Marcus had heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd called everyone they knew, trying to confirm the rumors, learning that yes, Marcus Hayes had inherited billions, and yes, he was now one of the wealthiest men in New York. Thank you all for accommodating this meeting, Morrison began. Mr. Hayes represents Hayes Consolidated Industries, which many of you may not know is already a minority shareholder in our firm. He's considering a significant increase in investment, which would provide capital for our expansion plans. But first, he'd like to understand our culture and partnership dynamics. Marcus smiled politely, projecting calm confidence while Derek squirmed. I appreciate everyone's time. I believe the strength of any organization lies in its people and values. I'd like to hear from each of you about what makes this firm special and where you see opportunities for growth. They went around the table. Most partners spoke about client relationships, practice areas, Market opportunities. Derek went last, his voice tight. I've built a significant corporate litigation practice here. My client revenue has grown 40% year over year. I think expansion into international arbitration would be a natural evolution. Marcus nodded, taking notes. Impressive growth. How do you balance aggressive business development with maintaining ethical standards and firm culture? Derek's jaw tightened. I don't think there's any conflict. Results speak for themselves. Do they? Marcus looked at Morrison. I noticed something interesting in the background materials. There have been 3 formal complaints against Mr. Chen from junior associates in the past year regarding hostile work environment concerns. 2 clients have privately expressed reservations about his aggressive tactics, and there's a pending state bar inquiry regarding his conduct in the Henderson litigation. Results at what cost? The room went silent. Derek's face turned red. Those are confidential personnel matters. I have access to everything relevant to my investment decision, Marcus said calmly, and I'm concerned about reputational risk. A firm's brand is built on integrity, not just revenue. One partner's problematic behavior can contaminate the entire organization. Morrison cleared his throat. We've been addressing these concerns internally. Have you? Marcus pulled out a tablet, displaying documentation. Because I've seen evidence of ongoing issues being minimized. Associates afraid to speak up, clients reassigned to protect revenue, ethical concerns swept aside. This isn't about one person. It's about systemic problems that suggest leadership hasn't taken the situation seriously enough. He let that sink in, then continued. I'm prepared to invest $150 million in this firm. In exchange, I want 40% equity and board control. I want the authority to restructure partnership as needed, implement new ethics and management protocols, and reshape the firm's culture. If you're not willing to make hard decisions about problematic partners, regardless of their revenue, then this isn't the right investment for me. The silence was deafening. Derek looked like he might explode. Several partners shifted uncomfortably. Morrison's expression was unreadable. You're saying you won't invest if Derek stays? One partner asked carefully. I'm saying I won't invest if the firm prioritizes short-term revenue over long-term reputation and culture, Marcus replied. Whether that applies to Mr. Chen or anyone else is for you to determine. But I need partners who share my values, and I need leadership willing to enforce standards consistently. Derek stood abruptly. This is personal. You're trying to punish me because of Elena. Sit down, Morrison said sharply. Derek hesitated, then slowly sat. Morrison turned to Marcus. Can you give us the room? Marcus collected his materials and left, walking to the reception area. 20 minutes later, Morrison emerged alone. That was bold, Morrison said. You put us in an impossible position. I presented facts and stated my requirements, Marcus replied. What you do with that information is your choice. Morrison studied him for a long moment. Derek Chen was my daughter's godfather. I've known him for 15 years, but I've also watched him become someone I don't respect, and I've been looking for a reason to act. You just gave it to me. He extended his hand. We'll meet your terms. Derek will be asked to leave the partnership within 30 days. I assume you'll want to be involved in finding his replacement? Marcus shook his hand. I have some thoughts on restructuring the entire litigation department. May I suggest we schedule a longer meeting next week? Walking out of the building, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected. Not triumph, but sadness. Derek had been his best friend, the person he trusted with everything. That Derek had destroyed himself through his own arrogance and ethical lapses didn't erase the loss of what their friendship had once been. His phone buzzed. Elena, from a new number he hadn't blocked yet. The text was frantic. Please, Marcus, we need to talk. Derek's career is falling apart, and I know it's because of you. Please, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry. Can we meet? Marcus deleted the message without responding. Some bridges once burned couldn't be rebuilt. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the living room of his childhood apartment in Queens, the place where his mother had raised him. The building manager had been shocked when Marcus had offered to buy the entire building, more shocked when Marcus had insisted on preserving it as affordable housing rather than converting it to luxury condos. The apartment was exactly as his mother had left it, worn furniture she'd refused to replace, kitchen appliances from the 90s, photographs of Marcus covering every surface. He'd been putting off coming here, unable to face her things, but Whitmore had called that morning with news that required him to confront his mother's secrets one final time. Your mother left specific instructions to be open 6 months after the estate settled, Whitmore had said. There are items in her apartment she wanted you to find personally, things that explain her choices. I think you need to see them. The lawyer had given him a key and a safety deposit box number. Marcus had started in the apartment, moving through rooms that smelled faintly of his mother's lavender perfume. In her bedroom closet, behind the modest clothes she'd worn, he found a locked filing cabinet. The key from Whitmore opened it. Inside were journals, hundreds of them, dating back 30 years. His mother's elegant handwriting filled page after page, business strategies, investment decisions, philosophical reflections on wealth and character, and notes about Marcus. She'd documented his entire life, his first words, his school achievements, his struggles and triumphs, her hopes and fears for him. One journal from 15 years ago caught his eye. The entry was dated the day after his 10th birthday. Marcus asked me today why we couldn't have a bigger apartment like his friend Derek's family. It broke my heart to see him feel less than others, but I know this struggle is teaching him empathy and resilience. Derek's parents give him everything, and I can already see the entitlement forming. Marcus is learning to earn, to appreciate, to work for what he wants. When he inherits this empire, he'll be ready because he'll understand the value of money in ways Derek never will. I'm building a man, not just transferring wealth. Marcus sat on his mother's bed, tears streaming down his face as he read page after page of her thoughts. She'd struggled with her decision constantly, second-guessing herself, worrying she was being too harsh, but always returning to her core belief that he needed to be forged by challenge before he could handle unprecedented success. She'd written about his relationship with Elena. I don't trust that girl. She looks at Marcus like he's a stepping stone, not a destination. But he loves her, and he needs to learn this lesson himself. Perhaps it's better he experiences heartbreak now, while he still thinks he has nothing, so he'll understand the difference between people who love him and people who love what he can provide. His mother had seen Elena's true nature years before Marcus had. She'd known and hadn't warned him, trusting he would survive the lesson and emerge stronger. The final journal was dated the week before her death. I need to tell Marcus the truth soon. He's 32 now, mature enough to handle this responsibility. I've scheduled a dinner for next month where I'll explain everything, introduce him to the board, begin his transition into leadership. I've put this off too long, wanting to give him more time to develop, but I'm getting older and the company needs continuity. I'm so proud of the man he's become. Honest, hardworking, compassionate, exactly the kind of person who deserves this legacy. He's going to be angry at first. Angry I hid this from him. Angry I let him struggle. But eventually he'll understand, I hope. She'd never gotten the chance to have that dinner, to explain her choices, to see his reaction. She'd died thinking she had more time, leaving Marcus to piece together her intentions from journals and documents. At the bank, the safety deposit box contained more surprises, stock certificates in Marcus's name dating back to his birth, trust she'd established for his future children, a video recording labeled, "For Marcus to watch when he's ready." Marcus took everything back to his penthouse and spent the evening reading, crying, and understanding his mother in ways he never had when she was alive. She'd been brilliant, strategic, and ultimately motivated by love so profound, she'd sacrificed his immediate happiness for his long-term character development. At midnight, he finally watched the video. His mother appeared on screen, looking healthy and vibrant, recorded perhaps a year before her death. She sat in an office Marcus didn't recognize, wearing one of the business suits from the photographs. "Hello, my darling boy," she began, and Marcus's throat tightened. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you know the truth. I imagine you're angry, confused, and probably feeling betrayed. Let me explain. I built Hayes Consolidated from nothing, starting with a small inheritance from my parents and growing it through careful investments and hard work. By the time you were born, I was already worth several $100 million. I could have raised you in mansions with every privilege, but I watched what wealth did to other families. The entitlement, the laziness, the emptiness of children who never had to work for anything. I decided to conduct an experiment, perhaps a selfish one. I wanted to raise you without wealth's corruption, to let you develop character through genuine struggle. Every hard moment you faced, every disappointment, every time you worked multiple jobs or worried about money, you were learning lessons that would make you worthy of this responsibility. I know I hurt you by hiding the truth. I know there were times you felt less than your peers, times you struggled unnecessarily. But look at who you became. A man with integrity, work ethic, and empathy. A man who understands what most wealthy people never learn, the real value of money and the importance of character. The company is yours now, all of it. I've set up the board to support your transition, hired advisors to help you navigate this world, created structures to protect you from parasites and opportunists. But ultimately, how you use this wealth is your choice. I hope you use it wisely, Marcus. I hope you remember the lessons of your upbringing. I hope you build something even greater than what I created, not just in monetary terms, but in positive impact on the world. And I hope you can forgive me for the deception. Everything I did because I loved you more than life itself. You are my greatest achievement, not the company, not the money. You. Be the man I raised you to be, my darling boy. Make choices that honor both who you were and who you're becoming. And know that wherever I am so incredibly proud of you. I love you forever, Mom. The video ended. Marcus sat in darkness, processing everything. His mother had been playing a decades-long game, sacrificing their relationship's honesty for his character development. He could be angry about that, or he could honor her intentions by proving she'd been right. His phone buzzed. Elena again, the 15th message that day. He finally read one. Derek's being forced out of his firm, and no one will hire him. His family's cutting him off because of the scandal. We're losing the townhouse. I know I hurt you, and I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, if you ever cared about me, help us. Marcus stared at the message. He had the power to help them or destroy them completely. His mother's words echoed. Make choices that honor who you are. Who was he? The struggling junior architect who'd loved Elena despite her flaws? The billionaire who'd been betrayed? The son trying to live up to his mother's vision? All of the above? He picked up his phone and began typing. The coffee shop was neutral territory, a small place in Park Slope where Marcus had never been. He arrived early, ordering black coffee and sitting at a corner table. Elena walked in 15 minutes later, and Marcus barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes hung wrong, and her carefully maintained appearance showed cracks. She looked tired, desperate, and afraid. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly, sliding into the seat across from him. Marcus said nothing, just watched her struggle to find words. I know you have no reason to help me, she finally began. I know what I did was unforgivable. I left you when you were grieving. I cheated with your best friend. I threw away our marriage for money and status. Tears welled in her eyes. I was shallow and cruel, and I destroyed something real for something fake. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked, his voice neutral. Because it's true. Because I need you to know I understand what I did. Derek and I, we thought we were so smart, trading up, building this glamorous life. But it was all superficial. The people we thought were friends were just social climbers. The lifestyle we couldn't afford was built on his family's money and his career, both of which are gone now. She wiped her eyes. His parents disowned him after the ethics scandal broke. His firm forced him out. No other firm will touch him because word got around. We're drowning in debt from trying to maintain appearances we couldn't afford. And you want me to fix it? She stopped, then shook her head. No, I don't have the right to ask you for anything. I came because I needed to apologize, to tell you that you deserve better, and to admit that I realized too late what I'd given up. You were always good to me, Marcus. You loved me honestly. And I threw it away because I was too stupid to appreciate it. Marcus sipped his coffee, studying her. She seemed genuine, but he'd believed her before and been wrong. Derek left me, Elena continued softly. 3 days ago. He blamed me for everything. Said I'd pushed him to compete with you. Said our lifestyle demands drove him to cut corners at work. Said I'd ruined his life. Then he packed up and moved in with his cousin in Jersey. I'm alone in that townhouse we can't afford, surrounded by furniture we bought on credit, facing bankruptcy and public humiliation. She met Marcus's eyes. I'm not here for money. I'm here because I owed you a real apology, and I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught or sorry things didn't work out. Sorry I hurt you when you were vulnerable. Sorry I betrayed someone who only ever loved me. Sorry I was too blind to see what actually mattered. The silence stretched between them. Marcus thought about his mother's journals, her belief in the formative power of struggle, her conviction that character was built through hardship. Do you know why I agreed to meet you? Marcus finally asked. Elena shook her head. Because my mother taught me that people are more than their worst moments. She taught me that everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow from their mistakes. She also taught me that real wealth isn't about money. It's about character, integrity, and how we treat people when we have power over them. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I'm not giving you money. I'm giving you an opportunity. This is a job offer with one of Hayes' consolidated subsidiary companies. Entry-level position, modest salary, nothing glamorous. It's in business operations. You'll work hard, learn the industry from the ground up, have to prove yourself without any special treatment. The only accommodation I've made is that they'll give you an advance on your first month's salary so you can find an affordable apartment. Elena stared at the envelope like it might disappear. I don't want your gratitude, Marcus continued. I don't want anything from you. But I watched you become someone I didn't recognize because you were chasing a lifestyle you thought would make you happy. Maybe if you build something real through actual work, you'll figure out who you actually are beneath the designer labels and social climbing. Why would you help me after everything I did? I'm not helping you. I'm honoring my mother's values. She believed in the transformative power of honest work and genuine struggle. She believed people could change if given the right circumstances. I'm testing whether she was right. He stood. Take the job or don't. It's your choice. But if you take it, understand that there's no special treatment, no reconciliation between us, no fairy tale ending. Just work and the chance to become someone you can respect. He left her sitting there, walking out into the autumn afternoon. He didn't know if she'd take the job, didn't know if she'd learn anything from the experience. But he'd given her the same kind of opportunity his mother had given him, the chance to develop character through challenge. Over the next 6 months, Marcus rebuilt Morrison, Chen & Associates into a firm known for both excellence and ethics. Derek's departure had been rocky, but the firm was healthier without his toxic presence. Marcus had used his position to promote talented junior attorneys, implement better workplace policies, and attract clients who valued integrity as much as results. Elena took the job. Marcus heard updates through HR reports. She struggled at first, made mistakes, but gradually found her footing. She worked hard, kept her head down, stopped posting on social media. According to her supervisor, she was becoming a solid employee who might eventually earn promotions on her own merit. Derek, meanwhile, had disappeared from their social circles entirely. Last Marcus heard, he was working for a small firm in New Jersey, handling unglamorous cases, living in a modest apartment. His arrogance had cost him everything, and he was rebuilding from nothing, if he was rebuilding at all. Marcus thought about them sometimes, about how quickly fortunes could reverse, about how the Derek who'd once had everything was now the one struggling, while Marcus, who'd lost everything, had gained more than he'd ever imagined. His mother's experiment had worked, perhaps better than she'd known. He'd developed character through struggle, learned to value integrity over appearance, and emerged from betrayal stronger rather than bitter. He stood in the apartment his mother had lived in, surrounded by her journals, and finally understood what she'd been trying to teach him. Wealth was a tool, not a measure of worth. Character was built through challenge, not comfort. And the greatest gift she'd given him wasn't the money, it was the foundation to handle it without losing himself. I hope I'm making you proud, Mom, he said to the empty room. And somehow he thought she was.